And we're on chapter 18 of Sketches. "Dana, it's okay," Ashley said as she squeezed me even tighter in her arms. I continued to sob, loud, deep sobs that started in my chest and worked their way up to my throat and out. I tried to stop crying, but I couldn't. I tried to stop shaking, but I couldn't do that either. At least I'd stopped throwing up. 3 times between leaving the warehouse and reaching the coffee shop, I'd had to double over and puke. "You've got to stop," Brent hissed. "People are staring." I raised my head from Ashley's shoulder and gazed around. There were about 24 people sitting on the stools at the counter or clustered around the little tables. Some were staring at their coffees. Others were looking directly at us. "Just take a sip of coffee," Brent suggested as he pushed a paper cup across the table toward me. Ashley loosened her grip, and I reached for the steaming cup of coffee. My hand was shaking badly. I used both hands to pick up the cup and brought it slowly to my mouth. Before I took a sip, I inhaled deeply the strong aroma of the coffee, hoping to replace that awful stench that seemed to cling to me still. I took a sip. It was hot and sweet. Usually I didn't drink coffee this late at night. It was after midnight, because it kept me awake. Tonight, it didn't matter, because whatever I did or didn't do, I wasn't going to sleep. I didn't even want to close my eyes, because every time I shut them, I saw that face. I shuddered and started to shake again. I took a deep breath to suppress the sobs. "How old do you think he was?" Ashley asked. Brent shrugged. "Hard to say, because of what his face looked like. But I think he was old. Maybe 30, or even 40 or 50. I would have better guessed if I'd had more time." We'd rushed out, a mad run with me screaming and tripping and falling down and getting back up and tearing through the dark warehouse. Ashley had finally grabbed me, and then she and Brent had walked me out, one on each side, supporting me so I wouldn't topple over, my legs weak and wobbly and unable to hold me up. "What do we do now?" I asked. "First, finish our coffee, and find some place to crash for what's left of the night," Brent said. "I meant about him, about the man. I don't think there's anything we can do for him." "We have to do something," I pleaded. "There's nothing we can do that'll make any difference for him. He's dead. He's going to stay dead," Brent said, his voice barely a whisper. "How long you figure he's been dead?" Ashley asked. I looked around again, hoping nobody could hear what we were saying. They'd all gone back to their coffee and donuts, and weren't even looking at us now. "Don't know. A while? A couple of days? Maybe a week?" "But shouldn't we call the police?" I suggested. "That won't make him any less dead. All it can do is get us in trouble." "How will it get us in trouble?" "Think about it. We live on the streets, and you're underage. You don't think the police are going to ask some questions that we can't answer? Maybe even think it was us that did it?" "We didn't do anything except find him. We didn't do anything wrong." "Of course we did. First up, we were trespassing on private property. Second, we're kids living on the street. So, as far as everybody in the whole world is concerned, we're always doing something wrong. The cops will probably hold us, put me in jail, and hand you 2 over to social services until they sorted out the whole thing. How he died." I hadn't even thought of that. "How do you think he died?" Brent shrugged. "Could have been anything. Maybe he overdosed. Maybe he was sick. Maybe somebody stuck a knife into him. I don't know, and I don't want to find out. I just want to keep some distance between that body and us." "I understand," I said. It's just that it doesn't seem right to leave him there." "Somebody else will find him, I'm sure. Eventually." "Maybe other people have found him before and just left him," I said. "She's right," Ashley said. "It seems wrong not to do something. Poor guy deserves something more." "At least if they found him, they could tell his family what happened," I added. "Maybe he doesn't even have a family," Brent said. "Everybody has a family," Ashley said. "Maybe he doesn't have a family that gives a damn about him," Brent said. "Maybe nobody cares if he's dead or alive. What it's like to have a family like that." Ashley looked hurt, and Brent had reached out and struck her. I guess in a way he had. Ashley looked hurt like Brent had reached out and struck her. I guess she had. "Maybe nobody does care," I agreed, "but maybe they do. Either way, I'd want my family to know." Brent got up abruptly from the table. "We have to get out of here." he said as he took his cup and paper plate and stuffed them into a garbage can. Let me finish my coffee, Ashley said. Take it with you. This isn't a good place for us to be. A coffee shop in the middle of the night? How long before some cops drop in for their nightly caffeine and donuts? I hadn't even thought about that. Both Ashley and I got up. I took another sip from my coffee and tossed the rest away. Brent was already at the door, holding it open. We hurried over to catch him, leaving the light and warmth of the coffee shop behind as we went out onto the street. We can't call, Brent said. I understand what you two are saying. We have to think about us. Even if we did call, anonymous from a payphone, it wouldn't do any good. The cops would just think it was a crank call, and they wouldn't even bother going to investigate. I guess you're right, Ashley agreed. Of course I'm right. Besides, we have bigger problems. We have to get off the street. It looks like it's going to rain. We have to find a place to crash tonight. How about if we can let the police know about the body without us having to make a call? I asked. What do you have in mind? Brent asked. I had an idea. I just didn't know if she'd go for it. And even if she did, I didn't know if it would work. Well? Ashley asked. Do you two trust Nikki? I asked. She's never done anything to make me not trust her, Brent said. Me either, Ashley agreed. Then maybe I could make a phone call. She gave me her card. It has an emergency number. She said if I ever really needed help, I could call her. I need help. We need help. Can I call her? Ashley looked hard at Brent. I knew she'd let me call. I also knew she wouldn't say anything until Brent had spoken. Let's look for a phone booth, Brent said. We were huddled in the doorway that was the back entrance to Sketches. The overhang provided some protection against the rain, which had turned from a light drizzle into a downpour. Shouldn't she be here by now? Brent asked. It's only been about 40 minutes, I said. She was asleep when I called, so she had to get dressed. I don't even know where she lives. It could be far away. There was a loud thump, and I jumped. Light cascaded into the alley, revealing Nikki holding open the door. Get in here, she said, and the three of us hurried into the building. She closed the door and slid a bolt into place. Are you three all right? She asked. I told Nikki all about what had happened when I called her. My lower lip began trembling, and I knew I was going to begin crying again. What a stupid question to ask. Of course you're not all right. She reached out and put an arm around me and her other arm around Ashley. Get over here, she ordered Brent. You need a hug too. I thought Brent might argue. Instead, he threw his arms around all three of us. I felt better being in the middle of that huddle. Now, I want all three of you to get changed in something dry. You do have some dry clothes with you, don't you? Probably. Maybe, I said. Depends on whether the rain soaked through my backpack. All of you check, and if you need dry things, I have some clothes in the office. While you're changing, I'll go and make some hot chocolate and maybe a sandwich. Do you all like grilled cheese? One of my favorites, Brent said. Me too, Ashley agreed. Dana? Yeah, I guess. But shouldn't you make a phone call first about the body? Already done. I called a friend of mine. He works out of 22 Division. And? Brent asked anxiously. I told him where the body was, and I told him I couldn't reveal how I knew it was there, but he'd just have to trust me and my sources. And did he? He said if I trusted the people that gave me that information, then he'd trust it too. I let out a big sigh of relief. At least he'd be taken care of. That only seemed right. Now get changed. I'll make the hot chocolate, and then the three of you should get some sleep. Where? Ashley asked. I'm not going to any shelter, Brent protested. Of course you're not, Nikki said. The three of you are going to sleep here tonight in my office. I have a couple of cots I can set up. They aren't great, but I'm pretty sure they're better than a lot of places you've slept before. We don't do this very often. We could lose our license if the zoning people found out. Then maybe we shouldn't, I said. We don't want to cause trouble for Sketches. You won't cause any trouble. Nobody is going to find out. Just go into my office, change, get out the cots, and settle in. I'll be in with the food in a few minutes. I finished off the final bite of the sandwich and washed it down with the last sip of my hot chocolate. It all tasted good. It all felt good in my stomach. I lay down on my cot. Ashley was resting in the second one. Brent had volunteered to take the floor, and we'd given him more of the blankets to make up for it. "Is everybody ready to turn in?" Nikki asked. She came over and tucked the corners of my blanket around my shoulders. It had been a long time since anybody had tucked me in. She did the same with Ashley. "Now, let me just get out my sleeping bag and we'll turn out the lights," Nikki said. "Your sleeping bag?" I asked. "You mean you're going to sleep here too?" "I'll just pull up a piece of the floor." "You can have my cot," I offered. "Or mine," Ashley added. She shook her head. "I'll be fine." "You don't have to do this," I said. "You can go home. We'll be okay." "I'm sure you will. But I also think it might be hard for you to sleep tonight after what happened, and if any of you need to talk, I'll be here." I was going to argue, but she was right. It was going to be hard to sleep, and having her there would make it easier. It felt good to have somebody looking out for us, an adult. It had been a long time since that had happened, even before I left home. "I'm just sorry I don't have a bedtime story to tell," Nikki said, "like a fairy tale." "That's okay," Brent said. "I never believed in those anyway." "Well, they do have a whole lot of strange and magical stuff in them," Nikki agreed. "That's not the part I don't believe in," he said. "Then what is?" she asked. "The last line of all the stories," he said. "You know, the one that goes, 'And they all lived happily ever after.'"